That's a 2008 number?
Yes.
Okay. And proposed salary, column 7, that's for this budget period, 2009?
Yes.
But surely I'm not comparing, so for example, not to pick on Bob, the difference between 95 and 124 in 1 year?
The salaries are being allocated percentage-wise to various departments. If you go one column over to number 10, it's 80% is being charged of his salary to certain budgets. So there's allocations, and the reason we skew the allocations are certain statutory formulas. We have to determine when we charge a fee, how do we get to the justification? So we take portions of salaries and allocate it to departments where we can charge third parties non-tax fees that they pay for, and we have to justify how we got to that. So we take salaries and take portions and allocate it out where we can bill it to a third party.
Okay, but getting back then to column 7, proposed salary, there's a number in between columns 6 and 7. What's the difference between that number, this column 6.5 and column 7?
The two numbers, the 175, 557. Dan?
One, just again for Bob, 122 versus 124. Is that the actual proposed increase from 08 to 09?
Yes.
Irrespective of how it's allocated?
Correct.
Right.
So again, getting back to my point, if you look at those differences between 6.5 and 7, it's like $2,000 in every case. It doesn't explain the large difference when I get to the summary page. I'm just trying to understand why we go from 178 to 191.
Makes you wonder if there's a spreadsheet error.
Yeah, and maybe it's just a clarification here.
I'm happy to double check that back at the computer and report back to.
Because I do agree with John. I mean, transparency and clarity is valuable in terms of looking at these budgets. Thank you.
Okay. I see we're really running into way too much detail.
Yep.
Yeah, so far. It's
Moving
after
on to
7.
180?
We'll try to move quickly. 180 is the planning board. The 215 budget deals with hires, the services provided by McCarter and English for the zoning board, who substitutes at times for the planning board. Gary Hall does a good job for us over the zoning board, and every once in a while substitutes for Vince Laughlin over at the planning board as well. The second legal, well, actually the primary legal service there is Johnstone Scott, Laughlin Lane, which is Vince Laughlin. He is our planning board attorney. Eileen Bonira is our board planner, and has Susan Blickstein attending most of the meetings. Lorraine Sola is a recording secretary that substitutes for Pat Coro at the meetings reasonably frequently for the past year in terms of doing tapes and minutes. David Zimmerman was on that list of hires for some work that he did earlier in the year. Also, Veritext and an audio digital transcription service were hired during the course of the year to comprise expenditures for that budget. And we don't believe any of those are particularly notable in terms of changes that we would propose for the coming year. I do believe there is a fairly long laundry list of planning activities that the planning board wants to accomplish for the coming year. And that was defined somewhat by a proposal that was done by Eileen Bonira and her firm. And so that's one of the reasons you see a significant increase in the expenditures versus proposal on the planning board professional services account number. And if we're more modest about what we want to have done at the planning board for the coming year, obviously there's some workability that exists there.
Help me understand why legal went from 10 to 25. I heard what you said, but help me understand why legal went from 10 to 25.
It looks like there was a rate increase requested, but certainly would not cover that number.
Better not.
Yeah. 10 to 25. That
That's what I'm
is,
saying.
that is interesting, because
huge.
I would have guessed myself that the original proposal would be much closer to 25.
Maybe I could jump in. We added to that line item for this and also for the Board of Adjustment in anticipation of Cougar Light litigation, because that's not reflected anywhere else in Joe Mazzacca's. And in the prior litigation, Gary Hall appeared on behalf of the borough, and we don't know which board it's going to end up at, so we're just, hopefully we won't have to use this money, but we want to be prepared if there's an application filed that our residents have indicated we want to defend our jurisdiction of our zoning rights. So in the planning board budget for legal and in the Board of Adjustment, there is money put aside to send the message that we're going to contest this seriously if an applicant comes in that we're opposed to, that they won't recognize our jurisdiction. So,
You know, just to comment on that, Ray, I mean, there are a lot of ways to budget. I'm of the view that you should budget only for things that you know are happening, as opposed to anticipated events. So that would be something I think I would cut out of this.
Yeah.
If there's not a current litigation,
well,
that's one of those.
there's a current court order. The issue is going to be whether, if we then incur this fee, whether it be recognized by the state as an emergency. We'd be hard pressed to say it's an emergency because we have notice, there's been prior court action, there's a court order. They've come in multiple times to pick up applications, and they've indicated they're going to come in and file an application. So we have to plan for it. If,
And is this also McCarter that we're using, or
well,
would we?
there would be multiple attorneys involved. Joe Mazzacca historically has represented the borough, and depending on which board it's at, in the prior proceeding, Gary Hall participated at the hearing along with Joe, and then the residents hired Rob Simon. So there are 3 attorneys on behalf of the borough and the residents' position. We don't know which board it would end up at, so both budgets have, we may end up with the planning board and the Board of Adjustment attorney and our borough attorney defending this matter, and an attorney for the residents that they're paying for.
Just in the context of what we're budgeting here, then are you suggesting, Ray, that the legal expense line items for planning and zoning, and perhaps even borough, have an allocation for potential Cougar Field litigation?
Joe's budget does not have, there's no funding recognized. His contract recognizes we pay him extra over his retainer, but there's no funding mechanism for that. So in the event we do incur it, this would be potential funding source
For him as well?
for him as well. Right. Right now, we have no money. We have $155,000 in. His annual retainer is $120,000.
Yeah.
So we have $35,000 available for all other legal matters exclusive of the litigation. So we're
And-
just trying to plan that this event is probable and be ready to defend it.
Well, and I guess, I understand your point, I understand the value in sending a signal. I also don't know how fair it is to have a guy like me look quickly at this budget and recognize that legal fees are going from 10 to 25. And when I'm looking to grab, every cost saving I can, having that one stick out like a sore thumb, and I think end up, with perhaps, this budget, or this budget entry, subject to undue scrutiny as a result. Well, I want to just give that some thought, and whether there isn't, from what you're saying, the legal fees could be incurred at any one of 3 municipal entities, borough, planning, or zoning, or a combination thereof.
Correct.
Are we better served having a reserve for litigation generally that would give us some flexibility to allocate it among various bodies as circumstances warrant, as opposed to putting this 15 in as a line, an increase of 15 in this budget with, and sending lawyers the signal that there's more money in the budget is never, and you subject this type of an item, as I suggested, to undue scrutiny. Now that I understand why it's there, I understand the need for it. I think my question is more, how do we budget for it more fairly to the public on the one hand, and then the various departments on the other?